All right, welcome to A Growing Concern. Tonight we're going to interview some folks with the Village of Hope, and if you've been watching the news, you might know what that is. But we'll discuss what that's about, and we have as my guest here, if I can find out where I wrote it down here. We have on my right Steve Kynes. Is it Kynes or Kynes?
Kynes.
Kynes, all right. Pastor Stephen Kynes. And then next we have Carrie Wheeler, and then we have Thumper. That's a really picturesque name. I love it. I'm used to folks in the forest community when I used to do a lot of forest activism. They all had, forest names. So
yeah.
I like that. It says
I'm from
more about
Estacada, so originally that's where it all started. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it says something that you've chosen yourself rather than was given to you. So I like that. Well, Pastor Steve, we'll start with you before you get into a little bit about what this Village of Hope is about. You are a pastor, so you must have a congregation.
I kind of have a congregation. I've been a pastor among the homeless for the last almost 25 years.
Wow.
And so mostly in Gresham, but also in downtown Portland and North Portland and St. John's and other places like that. And honestly, my congregation is usually around a meal. We usually have a meal, and then we'll have a service that is connected in some way to the meal or meals. We've had periods of time where we were like going all day long for a while. So
I see. Well, since you've been doing this for 25 years, you've seen the situation with homelessness and all that really escalate.
Yes, I mean I would probably say a lot of the numbers have remained pretty well the same in the last few years. There's been a lot of escalation that the numbers don't necessarily show. But what's been going on, especially more recently in the last couple years, is how many more of the folks are being pushed out in the open. So they're being forced to be seen, and while before people would hide in the woods or hide in there, now all the places that people used to hide, they can't hide anymore. They're going to have to be out in the open, and we see them next to the freeways. We see them next to residences, next to businesses, and that didn't used to be that way.
Oh, I never thought about it that way. I just thought it was just a lot more homelessness because of the rise in population of Portland. Of course, then that's going to rise. Because the population of homelessness aren't transient a lot. A lot of it is people who just lost their job or the health care issues or whatever pushed them out.
In fact, actually, it's interesting that the majority of folks who end up on the street, they want to stay in their local area. And there are certain kinds of homeless folks, especially young people who want to wander from place to place, and they're out for an adventurous life and all that. But those folks are a small minority of homeless folks. Most homeless folks want to stay in the same neighborhood that they became homeless or that they grew up in. They don't want to go anywhere else. And in fact, there was a study done, one of the surveys done in East County. They found out that 65% of the folks who are homeless on the street came from East County. They grew up and they've been in East County for years, and that's where they stayed.
Sure, I think Mike Davis said the same thing a while back.
Okay, yes, well, Mike Davis is my friend, so you probably got it from me.
Wow.
All right. So anyway, we have Thumper and we have Carrie here with us, and I take it that you both are homeless at the time.
I am.
At this time.
Correct.
And I don't know, I don't want to go in for how long or all that, but you find yourself in that situation, and Thumper does as well. And you were part of this Village of Hope.
Correct. Yeah.
And your experience with that was that you folks were able to help yourselves, and then you were swept out.
We had it pretty well set up, pretty well self-contained. Yes, we didn't need anything from anybody. Pretty much, we could do it all by ourselves. We started out pretty good and strong, and like always, they came and took it all away and told us we couldn't be there, which happens more often than not. But we never get left alone. Every time they see us, they move us.
I don't mean to infer that you're a couple or anything. You might be, but
no.
at the same time, you were there at the same time that she was. So
I've known her for probably 30 years.
Oh, yeah, all right.
One of my best friends.
What we started off to do was, for one, to establish a self-governing, self-sustaining community that could belie the stereotype of everybody's got of the homeless, which granted, you're going to have people like that no matter what. You can't. It's just a fact of life. You've got that in-house people as well. Okay, but we're not all like that.
No.
Okay,
we're not.
there's some of us that this was a transitional thing to give people opportunity for stability, to where they could get to the doctor's appointments. Or use Social Security for an example. If you have a series of Social Security appointments, you miss one, you have to start all over again. And if you're being swept out of wherever you're at every other day or once a week, even once a month, you can't make that appointment because you're worried about your stuff, which a lot of them think, well, it's garbage. No, it's not. It's what it takes to us to survive.
Survival.
And that little bit of comfortability and that we've got left, okay? One of the first things that you lose is self-esteem.
I'm going through that
Pretty
right
much.
now. I've
I
had
mean-
my claim canceled 3 times. I have to start over again,
Be-
which
be-
means there's no retro.
because you couldn't.
Because they couldn't keep track of me to give me my appeal court date. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have an address. My medical got shut off. My SNAP card got shut off. So I was just floating around out there doing nothing,
And being
trying to figure it
swept
out.
from place to
Right.
place,
I
trying
moved
to figure out
8
where the
times
next
in a month and a
place-
half.
Yeah.
8 times in a month and a half.
That is.
So now I got to start the claim all over, and that you don't get that retro. You know, you don't get all that back
You just,
from the beginning. The beginning is when you start your claim again.
even though they have all that paperwork,
Yeah,
you still
which
have
we
to start.
yeah, I've been ready for appeal twice, and I missed them both
That
times.
was what we were trying to establish, was a place that people could have that stability, and that's why it was a transitional camp. It wasn't a place to live forever.
Right.
It was, we established a 6-month, at the end of 6 months, if you hadn't made some sort of forward momentum, then pretty much, we take it under review with the council, and more than likely, if you're not trying to help yourself, then, we can only help you so much. You got to help yourself.
Right, and that's what we were doing,
and-
helping ourselves.
The thing is that what happens is that you have people who are ready. Maybe from the time they became homeless, they've been ready to help themselves, and so they set up a place in order to be helped. They set up a camp that they can store their stuff. They need to leave to do appointments or whatever, and then they come back, like our co-village manager Robert. He came back on Wednesday after doing some stuff, came back, and his wallet was stolen. That means he has to start again from getting his ID.
Yeah.
He has to get the money for his ID and then get a new ID before he can make any kind of progress whatsoever. But the other thing is that the city is actually making it more difficult by having sweeps throughout the entire city throughout the entire year. Now, it used to be that sweeps would occur 2 or 3 times a year. Just the city letting the homeless know about how much they don't love them, and they would sweep them from place to place. It would happen a couple times a year. But ever since the Springwater Trail incident about 1.5 years ago, the sweeps have been continuous, and the sweeps have been all over the city. And so that means you have folks all over the city that may have to move every other week, where they have to move, and then nobody can keep track of them. Social services don't know where they're at, and they can't keep appointments, which means that anybody who wants to make progress can't.
And our whole life is there. That's our life. Like, can you move your house in 2 days and clean up the mess? No, and that's why they hate us so bad, because we can't do it either.
And that's-
We're on bikes, bike carts, and shopping carts. Really? You guys have access to, hauling trucks and whatever. We can't do all that. So we're constantly moving and constantly leaving a mess, and that's what they're constantly on us.
Yeah, I mean, that's
You
the
know?
whole thing, is because the more often they sweep us, the more messes we leave behind. If they would pretty much, I'm not saying that if they left us alone in one spot that the messes wouldn't occur. I'm not that,
But we're trying.
not naive. Okay, but every time they sweep us, they give us 72 hours, per se, to pack up and be gone. What we're worried about is our necessaries.
Yeah.
Okay, and they even tell us, we'll leave the trash behind. And then they hold that against us.
Exactly.
Not
Make us
only
look
that,
bad.
but there's an outfit that they get paid to clean up after us. Okay, and they're making bank on it. What happened to I mean, I've been in jail a few times, and I know that was a cherished job. It was an outside work crew. What
Oh,
happened
yeah,
to those?
trustee, yeah.
The day
Yeah,
we
I
set
mean-
up the day we set up the village, we took out our own 26 bags of garbage after they had gone in and cleaned up and got paid for it. 26 bags of garbage, and we weren't done yet. We were taking more out.
There's always people that will benefit, like the
that's-
the prison industry or whatever.
Right.
There's always
Well,
people
yeah, I
that
mean,
will
that's
step
somebody
up and do
somewhere.
this.
That's pretty much the American way. Everybody's out to make a buck, but there's making a buck and then there's graft. I mean,
Right.
when you're making a buck and making the reason to make the buck,
And if they didn't make it so hard for us, we'd take care of it. We'd have our own dumpsters, or have our backers help us with that, or our advocates, or whatever it is. And I've hauled out garbage bags in my bike and bike cart. But there's nowhere to take it. I can't go to the dump with it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But if we had a dumpster, how much is a dumpster? Really? I mean, there's a lot of money out there being spent for nonsense. Money could be helping people that need it. You know,
And that's part of what Village of Hope was all about. That we'd have the porta potty, we'd have
Exactly.
the dumpster, we'd have the place, so that way
We aren't
we could keep the
shower.
place clean.
Yeah, exactly.
We keep the place clean. It would be a place for people to be stable, and
Yep.
we'd be able to,
And we're willing-
we'd have chores and make sure that the whole area, not just our specific area, but the area around, would be clean. And we'd also have security, so that way, if there's anybody else who was around, we'd make sure that
Sure.
the theft was down. When in the place where we set up, a business came up and said, well, we're really concerned about homeless folks because people are coming here in the middle of the night and taking our stuff. And I said, we'll make sure that doesn't happen.
right? We were willing to do all of that
And,
and pick up garbage up and down the road,
Without
and
a
replant,
cent,
whatever.
without a cent of city money. We wouldn't have taken a cent of city money because we didn't need the city. We had our own resources for all this.
They just control whether it can or cannot be there.
That's a lot of it. It's all about authority.
Yeah.
Whether it's cops or city council
They don't
or
have
whatever.
a clue how we live. They don't know what it's about. They don't know what it's like. They won't even come down and check it out. And that's all I want them to do. Give us 30 days. Give us 60 days. We'll prove ourselves. I'm confident of that, that we have the team to do that.
We do.
And we will show them that we are not just garbage. We are not somebody to just, forget because we're on the street. We're people too. Our heartbeats just like yours does. We deserve just as much a chance to live as you do.
Oh, I remember a while back when they did the sweeps, we had I think it was Amanda Elizabeth?
Amanda Elizabeth.
She's
She came
awesome.
on and she was
She's
a
awesome.
powerful
She's a good
spokesperson.
friend
She is
of
very.
She broke down crying a few times just talking about what
Right.
you guys are talking
Exactly.
about. And I was able to realize how much homeless advocates and people, even outside the church, the churches
They're
are
amazing
out
people.
there helping,
really
showing up
do.
with trucks to haul things off and all that. So, there's a lot of interaction between the people that are homeless that is good. Because all you hear about is on TV is the bad, of
course.
which is it bleeds it leads, like Ralph Nader says. If it thinks it stinks.
Yeah, well, and that's the same in a lot of ways. I mean, all you ever hear about is the things that the Portland cops do wrong. You don't ever hear about the other side of that coin.
Some of us have
I mean,
trade,
it's not a job I would want on. I no way.
No.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
So, and that falls category. It's throughout life, through everybody. I mean, there are good, there are bad, but the media and a lot of they focus on that negativity because that's what sells. Mm-hmm. And they really we need to pull ourselves away from that and look at the positive. I mean, I really don't know. There's a lot of positive there. There's a lot of people that have a lot of potential, and they've lost that. The first thing is that loss of self-esteem.
Right.
And then once they're down on themselves, it's really, really hard to get back up to where you can have that self-respect again. And that was the purpose of the
is
camp.
really-
It's an
Exactly
interesting
right.
thing, actually, because there's a sociologist who did a study on just different groups of people. So she put people in an MRI, because that's what sociologists do, and said, okay, different parts of the brain light up for different things. And if you're rich, then the envy part of your brain lights up. If you're thinking about a rich person, the envy part of your brain lights up. If you're thinking about a crippled person, the pity part of your brain lights up. And if you're thinking about, let's say, a single mom on welfare, then the disgust part of your brain lights up. I know it's
Sad
not
day.
good, but it's true.
Sad day.
It's true. Okay. And she says, okay, so she got up a box and she put every different social group in the box. She says that the problem was that when it came down to one group, they didn't fit in the box because people's reaction was so extreme for this one particular
It's
group.
so wide-ranging, probably.
And so what happened was that just homeless, the idea of how disgusting homeless people were so far way off in one corner
Wow,
as opposed
really?
to every other group. And she says that the automatic thing for most Americans when they think about homeless is how disgusting they are. And you know what? That's true for homeless people too. And when a person becomes homeless, they start to see themselves as a disgusting person.
That's
Fulfilling
why I prefer
prophecy.
houseless. That's why I prefer houseless.
So look,
Houseless
we can get
doesn't
into
sound
that.
so bad.
Yeah,
You
that'd be
know,
a good time to
if
get
my
into
mom
that.
was alive and I became homeless, she would turn her back. She would not. She would have a really hard time being in public with me because of that reason, whether I looked like it or not. My mom was very proud. I don't like the word homeless, because homeless means you've given up. You're a lost cause, and that's how people see us. It's a lost cause. They're never going to get any better. They're never going to try. They're going to do good for a minute, and then it's just going to fizzle out.
So
that's what they look at us.
Houseless seems more temporary.
Houseless seems temporary, and it feels temporary.
Is that how you feel, Thumper, about it? Because I know we discussed this before
I'm
the
more or
show.
less homeless by choice. Okay, I've got a 0 credit history, and I probably couldn't rent a place if I wanted to.
There's that,
I
too.
I take nothing from the government because I don't want anything from them. I don't really, honestly, I don't need anything from them. I can survive without it. I mean, yeah, granted, I depend a lot on the church, but I also
community.
just, I also give back. I don't just take. So I really don't need anything, and so there's not until I turn 65. I really don't care. You know, I've worked all my life. Just in the last 10 years, well, actually 13 years now, I've been homeless, and it was basically pretty much by choice. At first, it wasn't. I didn't have an option because I had no resources, nothing to fall back on. And then it just became something that I don't know if I could even live inside of a house and be comfortable. And not only that, but there's a wide variety of people a lot of them have such interesting stories behind not only how they became homeless, but their whole lives.
And who they are.
And it's the age range is from our age all the way to what scares me is
13.
the youngsters that are coming up in their early teens that they know nothing else. Their parents are homeless, and sometimes their grandparents have been homeless. So this is all they know. We've got to break that cycle somewhere, and a transitional village is where that's at.
And I just want to say that there's a lot of people that say, well, everyone who's homeless just wants to be homeless. Number one, totally not true. Number two, even the folks who do choose to be homeless, everyone that I've asked, well, did you actually choose to be homeless when you started? And they're like, well, I didn't choose to be homeless when I started. Yeah, that's because what happens is that the longer somebody stays on the street, the longer somebody is on the street, then the more difficult it is to try to not just make that transition, but to find themselves comfortable inside a housing facility. I can't believe how many folks on the street, they say, well, I couldn't deal with an apartment because it's too stuffy and I'd feel claustrophobic. You get claustrophobic about that. And so they said, well, I might be okay, like maybe in a mobile home or maybe, but I'm just as likely I'm much happier in a tent. I'd rather be in a tent in somebody's backyard than I would be in a stuffy room. And so different people have different things, and the longer that you're on the street, the more you're dealing with crisis, the more you're dealing with stress and trauma, and the more difficult it is to make a transition back into housing.
I haven't been homeless very long. About three. This is going to be my 4th summer. I became homeless when my mom passed away. I had a breakdown, and it was a rough part of my life. And I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be homeless at all. When I first went indoors, last spring, I went indoors for a little while, and I didn't like it. I was phobic. I had to have the doors and windows open at all times. It was rough. And like Steve said, I have people tell me all the time from my church, don't get complacent. Don't get used to it. You get used to it, it becomes a habit. You're going to stay out there. That's not what I want. I am getting used to it. I'm starting to feel the part, not just play the part until I can get something better. I'm starting to know that I'm homeless. It's starting to affect me in a different way. Stress is a big thing about it. My health has gone down. I have no self-esteem. He's right. I've been here for almost 4 years, and I can't imagine people that have been out here 10, 15 years.
But the thing is that if you don't get used to it, then you're constantly living with anxiety
There it is.
all the time.
And that's
how can you live that way?
Either way,
You have no choice. You have no choice. I have people like Pastor Stephen Thumper in my church, and my fellow people, without them, I wouldn't have made it this far. I wouldn't have made it this far. Being out here alone is the most intense thing I've ever endured in my life. And if I didn't have these guys, I wouldn't have made it this far. I was ready to give up when I met Steve. Ready to give up. I was
That's
done.
something I was just going to bring up is, you get used to it, but you get used to, I would think that people in the situations, especially when you have the Dignity Villages and the Villages of Hope, you have a community.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have that when you're housed. You might have it at work. You have your family, and maybe you have your churches and your different things. But I don't think that's as an immediate part of your life as living with a
It's
in
not.
a
It's not.
say
we,
the
we
village. of
rely
hope.
on each other. We rely on each other to survive.
In a lot of
You
ways,
know?
it's a very, I mean, it's a tight knit community. Yeah,
Sure.
granted that we may be spread out all over Hell's Half Acre, but
And we yell at each other a
A
lot.
lot.
that's,
A lot. Some of us are deaf.
Just like your family.
Some of us can't hear anymore.
and you know they come around and they do the sweeps and they hand out the little things and say, you know, call 211. Okay, great. 45 minutes on 211, and they give you a number to call
Nothing.
for a shelter that you've got to be in there by 8 o'clock. It's downtown. It's someplace that 99% of us don't feel safe
It's not clean.
because you can't relax there, because if you relax for a minute, somebody's going to rip you off.
Yeah.
Okay, not only that, but there are not near enough beds
Not even.
and to house the available homeless.
And a lot of us can't handle that big of a crowd of people.
in a 20 square block radius, there's over 100 homeless people in the area that we were established in the village.
At
Okay, and
least.
that's just, I know a lot of those people weren't part of our village, but they're all part of our community.
They're part of our family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like them or not.
you know,
I have
when
no
push
family
comes
left.
to
They
shove,
are my
they're
family.
there.
Right.
You know,
Regardless.
maybe not for the petty stuff, but when it really matters, they are there.
That's true.
Yeah, it's
And-
true.
You know, one of the major things I learned from Amanda when she was on the show is she says that you know, everybody in the neighborhoods that that have the houses and they live the typical life, they're down because so many of the homeless steal from them. But she says those few that do that also stealing from the homeless people.
They are.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. And those are the
there's
ones
that
we-
stress, like you alluded to it. You all
Those are the
alluded
ones
to
who
it.
are used to
and
being out
that
here.
that is something people I don't think ever take into consideration, that these predators are working both sides.
They're not just stealing from us. They're beating us up. They're hurting our dogs. Or, you know, they're repeatedly taking anything you have to be self-sufficient.
And it isn't just houseless people who are stealing.
No.
We also have housed people who come out to houseless camps
hang out.
and will threaten or beat up or sell drugs. Most of the people who are selling the drugs are housed people coming to houseless
never
camps
heard that.
and
For
sure.
selling drugs
Oh, yeah.
there.
It's true. I'm in recovery, and I'll tell you firsthand that is a true story. That is absolutely true. There's more housed people that are damaging the houseless than you think.
And the thing is that people are saying, well, man, these houseless people are abusing and all of that. You know what? Actually, it's the housed people who are abusing the houseless,
lot.
who are taking economic advantage of the houseless. You know, Carrie says that she prefers houseless instead of homeless. Personally, I prefer economic refugee.
That's too hard to remember right
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry.
I'm telling you.
sorry.
You
Maybe
got
that's a
me.
textbook thing.
For
I'm not
sure.
sure. But anyway, I
Therapy,
prefer,
can
all
you
I'm
say?
saying is that I prefer economic refugee because these are people who are out and they're forced to be on public land. They're forced to live in a tent or all of that because of the economics.
More all the time.
I like that distinction. It's a bit wordy, but it says something. Houseless and homeless seems to seem the connotations of it's them rather than economic. What you said,
Economic refugee.
That's what I would
refugee
say.
puts it in. It's a social condition. It's not an individual condition.
And just remember,
and I like
I
that.
am a pastor. That means I have to be wordy. It's part of the contract, part
And
of
he's
the
very
job
kind.
description.
He's a very kind man. Very, very kind.
But wordy.
But,
Yes.
well, I'd like to get back just quickly to Village of Hope. We've all seen it on TV, but what was the timeline and how did that unfold from your standpoint? You always hear about what's going on, and even though they interview folks from the Village of Hope, it's according to they narrate what's going on with
course
it.
they do.
I was just curious about how you would unfold how that happened, how long it took, and the relationship of the city council to you folks.
Well, the
That's-
relationship of the city council to us is a very quick story.
Absolutely.
So what we
Sorry
did
to hear that.
is we've
We
been
are too.
we planned Village of Hope, and we have our managers all set up, all of the basics. We had training, and that happened over a period of months. And then we built the platforms and set up the village in a single weekend.
Was the
And-
land okay with whoever owned the land for you to do that there?
Well, the land is public land.
Oh, okay.
And so what we did is we chose a piece of land that it was zoned industrial but was undeveloped. Just a sliver of land, and land that wasn't being used wasn't being used by anyone. So we set up. But the other thing about this piece of land is that it was owned by or run by the Parks Department, and the broader area, like Thumper and Carrie said, is many houseless folks there. We were able to take some of the houseless folks who were already living on the land, and rather than have them pick up and move every couple weeks, we provided stability on low impact platforms. So these platforms are such that way they're not going to harm the environment. We didn't touch the trees. We made sure that everything was careful and good for the wildlife that were in the area. Even though, once again, it's an industrial zone, but it was right next to a protected area. Anyway, and so we set up there. And then the ranger said, well, you're not supposed to set these things up there. And we go, okay. And then they started giving us exclusions from being, and then by the end of the week, they brought a lot of police officers. About
22.
22.
22
I was going to
cops.
say about 20. 22 police officers to
people.
escort us at 7 o'clock in the morning to escort us all off of the property. And for the most part, we were prepared for that, but there was a couple people that weren't really ready for that.
And even after that, we went and got the food for the homeless camps and delivered it
That same
on
day.
the same day.
Because every Friday we have we collect food and we get food to houseless camps. That particular day that we were swept and forced off the land, we made sure that we got that food and we delivered it to the people who were needing it.
While our stuff's
There's a
being
lot of
taken.
people out there that won't go because of whatever reason. They don't feel comfortable going out into the food banks and panhandling, whatever. So they're pretty much reclusive.
Right.
And that's what a lot of the camps that we deliver to. That otherwise, I'm
Or
not going to say they
disabled.
would go hungry, but they sure wouldn't eat as well as they do. Okay, I mean, and it's we don't bring steak and potatoes out there, but I mean.
But we survive
A
on
little's
it.
a lot when it's all
we
you
bring
got.
a lot of potatoes.
We bring a lot of potatoes. I was just going to
lot of
say.
potatoes.
I was going to
Well, we
say.
could use a little more steak now.
Right.
But man, if people just could get past that stereotype of, okay, you're a bum because you're homeless,
Not true.
and it's not. If they really want to think about it and they can use a context that maybe makes sense to them, go back to their grandparents, the Hoover during the Depression.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the statue they got in Park Rose. They call him the immigrant. All he is a homeless guy from the 30s. Okay, he's got a rope belt and rope around his suitcase. That's all he is, and he's just looking for a chance, and that's all we want.
Sure, like the people that came out here to California and the West Coast during
Exactly.
the Dust Bowl.
There it is.
You know,
Yeah, that's
they
what I'm
call
talking
them
about.
Okies
Yeah.
and
That's
Arkies
where my
and all that.
grandparents came from out here.
I'm a redneck, and
Grandpa
I'm
said
okay
the
with
reason
it.
they stopped in Oregon is because that's where the farm ended up.
So yeah, and then folks in this country, it's gotten pretty bad because they're even not only down on homeless, but they're down on refugees. Yeah. There's not a political, there's a social situation with you folks, but with the refugees, it's political and it's life threatening.
And the thing
This is life threatening. This is my life. This is what I've got left. And I'm not very healthy as it is. And I'm fighting for that.
That's the wrong word because it's life threatening, but not bombs dropping, I guess.
Right.
not bombs dropping, but the thing is that
we should
I'm really
discuss
proud. I'm really proud of being in Portland. That is a sanctuary city, and that is making absolutely sure that they're going to welcome folks from other countries who are in dire situations. However, we're not willing to look at the people who are in dire situations that we created ourselves.
Good
Portland
point.
creates dire situations. Portland creates folks on the street and economic refugees, but they don't want to look at what they're doing themselves. Okay, we may not have bombs dropping on us, but we have economic bombs. We have high rents. We have, they talk about that they're going to get more affordable housing. No, they need more low-income housing because what they're doing right now is they're pushing all the poor people out of the county. They're pushing all the poor people to go other places, just like how when we were all in Gresham and we were pushed out of Gresham into Portland,
Right.
and then Portland's now trying to push us out.
Pushes back.
I was pushed into Gresham to begin with.
Yeah.
That's how I became in Gresham. It started in Portland.
I understand their reasoning behind some of like the zombie motorhomes. Okay, believe me, I understand. I've seen the worst of all that. But an example is just last week, they did a sweep. At the same time they did the sweep for a lot of the other folks down there along that area, and there was a young couple. He lost his job. She was still working. She was in the healthcare profession, and they were in their motorhome. Okay, and they towed their motorhome because they bought it from out through an auction. They didn't have current tags on it, so they towed it. So now there is a family, that's a man and a wife and 2 children.
Oh wow!
On the streets in a tent because they didn't have current registration. And
When was that?
That was right there by Johnny's
When was that?
last week.
I wish you would have told me that. I could have
thought I
helped him.
did.
No, you didn't. I could have helped him. Dang, that bugged me.
I'm
That happens a lot,
I thought I had said something.
It happens a lot.
I mean, Johnny took him in. She's got him in there at
They're
her
supposed to green
place at
tag
the
him.
moment, but and that just creates more, and that's more people, and that was just one instance. I mean,
And once you lose all that, to try to get back on your feet and have any type of stability at all is almost impossible. I fall in the cracks of everything. The resources that are out there, sure, they might work for a lot of people. They absolutely don't work for me. I've been working with Join for 3 years. They haven't even given me as much as a bus ticket.
Sure.
Because if they're going to pay my rent for a few months, who's going to pay it after that? My claim's been canceled 3 times. That's how I was going to pay for it, you know?
Temporary,
Yeah, I can't get my feet in anywhere because I'm floating into every crack. And it's just,
You don't have time to get centered anywhere.
no.
Well, the Thumper
Absolutely.
brings up a good point that I was thinking that has come up in every time we've ever interviewed people here is a lot of the folks who are homeless are working. A lot of the folks who are homeless or houseless are their families, and a lot of them are vets.
Right. What happened to the vets at 9/11? They're not going to help anybody before that? What's that about?
Well, I will say that the vets have been getting more help in the last few years. More and more vets are getting off the street.
That is true.
That is excellent. But it is still true that about 40% of the people on the street are working a job. They just can't afford housing.
Right. Housing is so bad.
Which is a lot of what the 15 now is about. But even then, I don't think one person making $15 an hour is going to be able to save up the money for first, last, and all that. I mean,
Not
at
survive
an
during
average
that
rent of
time,
$1,000 a month
Right.
for a 2-bedroom.
Yep.
I
or
mean,
more.
$1,000 a month. That's an
So-
average. It's just what I put together. I mean, and it goes more and goes less. And those are the low-income housing that Portland's putting
Yeah,
up. You
I
know,
was paying $650 for my last
there are
2-bedroom.
no-
You know, I can't imagine paying what they pay now.
there are no shelters in the East End out there, out where we were. There aren't any. Gresham won't allow them for one.
Gresham allows.
But the new
Gresham
shelters-
allows one shelter, the women's shelter.
But
Right,
the
but it's
new
not-
shelter on
not-
122nd, they got all their windows broke out of all their cars, so it's not safe any safer than it is out here. The shelters aren't going to help them. They aren't going to do anything about it. You know, I mean, so shelters aren't exactly the safest place either.
No, I know when Mike Davis was on, we got in quite a bit of philosophical discussion of how, this isn't an individual problem. It's actually a symptom of society's attitude and society's way of doing things.
Right.
It isn't just that these folks failed. It's the fact that it's a failure of the whole society, and that's difficult to get through to someone who goes to jobs and they make their money and they pay their
Right.
bills and they toe the line because they're able to.
Well, it's the thing is that I'm always asking. I teach classes about some introduction to houselessness, and I always ask people, what are the causes of houselessness? You always hear drugs, mental illness, low, not enough rent, and all that.
Criminality
And
and-
criminality, whatever. Okay,
Loss.
but all of those, not a single one of them is a cause of homelessness. Mental illness is not a cause of homelessness, but why? Because if you've got family that'll help you, then even if you're mentally ill, you're going to be okay. What if you lost your job? Well, if you've got friends that are going to support you, you don't have that. The cause of homelessness is a lack of a social network. That's the thing, is that we are so disconnected from our families. We are so disconnected from friends, and people are not willing to help. Oh, well, you've got a problem. You want to know the number one way that your friends are no longer going to help you? Is if you end up on the street.
Exactly.
All of a sudden now, you don't have any friends.
I don't have any family, or like you said, friends. I don't have that either, and it's really hard these guys are. That's it. That's what I rely on these guys for.
Well, it seems to me what I get from what Carrie's saying is the stress and all this stuff that happens, not very clear there, but all these things that happen to people when they're on the street, they can create a mental health condition.
Exactly.
We got real life going on around us all day long, every day, 365 days a year. Everybody else we know that's in-house, they have structured lives and routines. We can't even begin to start doing that.
And that routine's driving them crazy. Too.
Right.
Every single person have mental weaknesses. We all have eccentricities or issues or things like that, and people live with them, or people deal with it. But when you get on the street, then you're dealing with trauma. And you have trauma that is pushing you and pushing you and pushing you, and all the little teeny cracks that are there ends up becoming larger and larger and larger cracks. And so all the things and the longer that you're on the street, the more those tiny cracks grow until you finally have full-blown insanity going on there. I shouldn't say insanity.
PTSD is better.
PTSD is a good one.
It's hard.
Yeah, that's actually what it is. I mean, because the whole experience of becoming homeless is a serious trauma to most people. I mean, one minute you got a house and your kids got a roof over their heads and a place to take a bath and go to school. Your wife can get cleaned up to go to work. You can get cleaned up to go to work. All of a sudden, you don't have a job.
Even to look for work.
Exactly, even. And then all of a sudden, that's taken away from you. That's a major trauma, especially to anybody that's got any kind of familiar responsibility. So from that point forward, then if you don't have any access to. And it's not just the resources. A lot of it is resources as in family or close friends. I mean, I pretty much have no family. My parents passed away, and as far as the rest of my family goes, we're just not even going to talk about them. But I have another family. I mean, these guys and people I've known for 25 and 35 years, and they've always been there, and I've been there for them. And that's family. That's what that's all about. If somebody's down, you don't kick them, you give them a hand. You don't support them, but you give them a hand.
Hand up, not a hand out.
Community and the society in general has stopped doing that. We've become totally detached from anybody else's concerns but our own.
Been polarized.
Bingo.
Yep. So, well, we got, 21 minutes left? We might open up the phones. We didn't have these for a while. We kind of lost a lot of our phone traffic, but we'll put the number up, and perhaps we'll get some folks to come on and ask some questions, because there's a lot of room for questions and answers here. And we all drive around Portland, and we see what's going on. And on one side you see a lot of the trash, which can make you kind of wonder what's going on, and we've discussed that a little bit. On the other side, I see all these areas, especially under the freeways, where they put all these rocks, and they make it impossible for people to rest for a minute.
And stay dry.
There's so much to talk about, and so much to understand that it's difficult to see some perspectives when you've got a completely different one,
Right.
And I sometimes think, you go out and you go to a movie or you go somewhere and then you go home. What happens if you don't have that home to center yourself, to go to the bathroom when you need to? And there's just so many things that are absent without a home or a house. So we got the phone number up. I think, did I see? I did. We have first caller, you're on the air. First one's kind of rocky sometimes, so we'll get the first caller. We'll prime the pump here. First caller, you're on the air. Well, they'll work on that. Hopefully, they'll get that in there.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. It's just kind of like at a high school dance. Sometimes it's difficult to get the first person going until someone gets out there and does the jig or whatever. So, but they'll work on that. These phones have been giving us trouble since I don't know when. So. But anyway, you were talking about the different reasons for homelessness, the mental illness, which you made a very good point there. I like that, and the criminality and the health care and all the different reasons it can happen. What do they say that? Oh, is someone there?
Hello there.
Hello. Hey, you're on the air. Welcome to the program.
Hey, I just wanted to say God bless you all for one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your name?
My name's Scott.
Hey,
Hi, Scott.
Howdy there.
Hello.
I was homeless at an early age, 15. I lived a long life of, bumming it. I learned how to play guitar so I could make some money. I learned how to cook so I could have a job. None of those things have ever always worked out. So it's always, even when I have a home, it's a scary thing.
Right.
I'm always worried about I'll lose my job, I'll lose the next gig, you know, and at the same time, what can I do? What can I do to help those I've left behind?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That, you know, social pressures on everybody is in varying degrees is I think a lot more than it should be, and it accounts for a lot of the problems people have, whether it's problems within their own life or getting a decent viewpoint of folks, you know, outside themselves.
You know, Scott, actually, you're saying, well, what do you do for the folks that are out there? You've been out there. You know what the needs are. You know how much socks are good. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you know the nights.
No, I know, and I do anytime I can, and that's what's bringing me down. Is like I see what I can do, but I can only do so much.
We appreciate anything you can do. It just means you're back behind us, and that's big to us.
But you know,
Volunteer.
Yeah, volunteer, get into some places, and it sounds like maybe you're already giving back, but you know, there's one other thing that you can do, which is that you can write the mayor, and you can write Amanda Fritz, and you can say, stop abusing the homeless people.
Right.
I've been there. Stop abusing my
wife and I
people.
are already on top of that.
Awesome.
Right
Thank
on.
you, Scott. That's what we want to hear.
There you go.
If you want to send
Man, the man.
if
Thank
you want to
you.
send a letter to them
I
and
tell
say,
you
hey,
what.
you need to talk to those people at Village of
I
Hope.
just want to give you all a big hug for doing this. I was surfing the channels and I saw you and I was like, this is what we've needed for years.
Correct.
All right.
Cool. Thank you, Scott.
Well, I sure appreciate your call then very much. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you. God bless you.
God
All right.
bless you.
Back at you there. God damn, I was going to go somewhere with that. Oh, yeah. He's been there. He knows. You know, you say you don't know what to do. He knows what to do. But some folks out there that are reviewing who've never had problems with this, how can they help? How can they? Where do they go to volunteer?
I get so many people who are saying, well, there's all these people who are panhandling and all that, and I don't necessarily want to give them money. What am I supposed to do? Give in times like this when it's cold, we're going to get some nasty cold weather, get some hand warmers, get gloves, most people already have their hats, but also get socks, get little things of food that you can hand out the car door.
Those little coffee cup things that you know, they're like a Coleman, and you can
Just
put
in a
warm
styrofoam
soup.
cup or something?
No, they're like thermal. But you can get them at the dollar store, and they hold warm soup and they keep the soup warm. So when we're out there doing whatever we got to do to survive that day, we can have that for a couple hours. Most of us, I'm a coffee drinker, and I have to have my coffee. And I don't get my coffee very often, unless I get it brought to me. Those things are amazing. You can put soup, you can put coffee, you know, or
Little
whatever.
things mean a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show up.
Little lap
protest.
blankets.
Volunteer.
Help us make
Put
signs.
your voice behind it. I mean, everybody's got a couple of minutes that they can spare. There's all kind. I mean, go to the city council meetings.
Right.
Let your voice be heard.
Even if you just stand behind us, you're still standing there. You're still
And
a part
if
of it.
you have something negative to say, you're more than welcome to say it. Listen, you know, that's what we're all about.
We're
It's-
used to
it's
that.
USA. I mean,
There's a lot of folks who spend a lot of, you know, like Joe. What's his last name?
Joe Walsh?
Joe Walsh,
Right.
a lone vet, and
Yeah.
and some of these other folks who they're advocates and they're down there in their face all the time. I'm not too sure it does any good though, because you know they're so vehement about their position that they just get kicked out.
It's not the vehemence. The problem is that for the most part that they're alone. They need
there you
more
are.
people. If we filled up the council every week with people who sing "Stop the Sweeps," we need more places for people to sleep instead of sweeps. Sleep, not sweeps. If we filled up the city council every Wednesday with that, then they'd
Something would
have to
happen.
listen.
Something would happen.
If we sent hundreds of letters a week, if we, you know, right now the city has a number that you can call to find out about if you've got a complaint about houseless people, then you can do that, and they receive about 400 phone calls a week. The fact is that if we had 400 positive phone calls, if we had 400 phone calls to that same line saying, no, stop sweeping these people. There are good people here. Why are you sweeping the clean people? Why are you sweeping the good people? Why are you sweeping the people who are benefiting our community? Stop it. If we had just that many phone calls, then the city would have to reconsider what they're doing.
Yeah, you know, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution.
There you go.
And,
There it is.
I suppose that they have provided some solutions, but sweeping people, I think, just sweeps all that work that they do towards the solution away.
It used to be the Rangers, I mean, back when I first, like 10, 12, 13 years ago, if you had a clean camp, they pretty much left you alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, if
You
you had a
want to
trash
clean
camp,
stuff up.
then I'm all for it, man. Clean that place
We'll
up.
help you. We'll help you clean up the bad ones for sure. We don't want them there
But
either.
now it's just, there's no differentiation. It's like,
We're all the same.
and
to them.
I don't want to say that some of us get targeted, but some of us do get targeted. And it's probably because they see us more often than not, because I don't try to hide.
And I'm out there
I'll pitch my
volunteering all
tent
the time.
right alongside. I don't care, because most things do is tell me to go, you know. And at this point now they're starting this exclusion thing, so that even narrows my possibilities of where to go even more.
Right.
Because what part of empty land does not the government own?
Now they're making us think hard and try to hide harder. And, you know, pretty soon it's going to be, you know, I mean, we're not going anywhere. We need to live too. This is my home. I'm too old to go anywhere else with, I'm not starting over anywhere. This is it.
Last I checked, houseless folks have molecules. That means they take up space. That means they have to have space in order
Exactly.
to exist.
Right.
If you're saying we have nowhere for you to exist, what you're saying is you don't deserve to exist.
And I do.
Thank you very much for that message.
Right, exactly. And what are we teaching our grandkids? What does that tell my grandkids? I have an autistic grandson. What does that tell him? You know, he's a very loving kid. I don't want him to grow up in this society because they're not right. They're not open-minded. They're so stuck in their daily routine of having whatever they need whenever they want it. They don't see anything else. They don't even want to look.
Well, unfortunately, we live in a society now that is becoming super polarized, whether it's Democrat, Republican, homeless, not homeless.
Well, exactly.
It's becoming so polarized that people are compartmentalizing themselves to the point where everything that's not within that compartment is
Right.
worse than at arm's length.
Right.
And everyone, I think, is scared of their existence. Everyone is afraid of where they're going to be economically by the end of the year.
Right.
And I think, and everyone is just like, well, I need to protect myself. I need to do and if that means protecting myself against houseless people, if I've got to protect myself against these people who are not into my personal economic interest, well, then we're at war with each other. That's awful. That's just awful.
It is awful.
I know that there's some kind of thing the city was wanting to do. Was it around Foster somewhere? And there's the people on the
The shelter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
The new shelter they set
the
up.
people just lit up in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they forced it down. I haven't.
No,
less and less watching the news these days.
They're going to set up. They're going to set up the shelter. They heard all the complaints, and then they're setting up the shelter in the same place.
That's somewhere on Foster there.
Yes, that's on
Next
Foster.
autumn.
Now, there's probably a drop in the bucket. It wasn't needed.
104
Well, it's-
beds.
Yeah,
104 is quite a bit.
That is quite a bit.
It
Yeah.
sounds like quite a bit until you realize that there's 4,000 people on the
Right.
street.
Well, that's
Yeah.
Most of them are 75
I-
capacity or 100, and they're still moving people all over the place trying to find
100
them
is
more.
nothing. I mean, like I said, in a 20 square block radius, from 158th to 181st, from Sandy to Marine Drive, I can fill that 100 twice.
Exactly.
So is there any attempt to make it for families only and vets only or anything
I have
like
no
that?
idea. on
We
that.
have
That's-
families
know how
only.
they're doing that.
We have family only shelters already.
There's one family. No, they shut it down.
Oh, they
Because,
did?
well, the roof was leaking, and so they
Oh, the
shut
wood
it
It was
shed.
the old woodshed.
Yeah,
right,
the
got it,
woodshed,
right.
and so they had to shut it down.
Oh,
All those families are in motels right now, but they don't know when they're going to open up the shelter again.
Now that's
That's
something
sad.
somebody wanted to give back. We've got how many roofing companies in the city of Portland? Somebody could donate
Right,
a roof to that
exactly.
place.
See-
Okay, that roof's been bad ever since it was the Woodshed Tavern. Okay,
And people can
that's
donate their
reason-
labor.
Yes,
Exactly. I mean,
exactly.
they can write it off. To
We can
their
volunteer
taxes.
there.
It's not
We can
gonna
volunteer our
actually physically
labor.
cost them anything.
Let us
and
help.
That's giving back. And you'd be surprised once they do that, what kind of good feeling they get out of that.
And if
sure.
anybody's interested in doing that, by the way, call Human Solutions. They'd be
Bingo.
happy to have that. No
Right.
problem.
That's something I was going to bring out. We're a lot of things we've talked about. Human Solutions is a place that people can call to volunteer labor. Maybe you're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
And what are some of the other places?
Well, so for instance, I mean, you can call TPI. You can
TPI is
that's Transition Project. So the Bud Clark Center is one of those places. Also, you can. But there are so many churches that have things. Oh, Operation Night Watch. They're always looking for volunteers to help
Right.
keep them open. That's just a place that's open at night, gives folks a place to hang out, to talk, to socialize, and get a little bit of food.
Stay safe.
And stay safe. It's a great facility.
Operation Night Watch.
Operation Night
Is that
Watch.
downtown?
They have multiple locations.
Ah,
so they
okay.
have downtown Southeast. They've started something in North Portland.
Is that public city council running that, or is it?
No, that's a separate nonprofit.
All right.
That does that. Also, they're going to need the Clackamas Service Center is going to be open in Southeast again. So that's another great place to volunteer at and offer some help.
Well, we'll hold that place. I think we have a call. Next caller, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I just have a comment. I've been listening to your program, and God bless you people for doing the work you do.
Thank
but
you.
what I've got to say is the amount of resources that are going for illegal immigrants should be going to the homeless. I understand and I'm sympathetic to people in other countries and their positions and their situations, but we have to take care of our own first. And even though the pastor is very open-minded and open to being a sanctuary city in Portland and all that, I still believe a lot of resources are being given to people who are here illegally, and they should be given to the homeless first. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you so much.
Well, she
You are
just
so
dropped
right.
the bomb and got
For
off.
sure. Like your spunk.
Well, I tend to agree
we need
with
people like that.
I tend to agree with you, but she's got a point that a lot of people agree with.
Yeah.
The thing is that you know that they're putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a dog park in East County. They are putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a bike park, and I don't have any problem with these things. But you know what?
Helps.
Shouldn't we take care of people who are in need first?
Before we-
What is the priority of our city?
That's some good points.
We're already
They
beautiful.
get money from
We're
a federal
Oregon.
grant for homelessness, and they use it for a study
The sweep.
or to fund a private organization to come around and do what county inmates could do for a third of the
Right.
cost and a lot more benefit and a better job.
And it'd be good for them.
Yeah, like it's not the money you spend; it's how you spend it. I
There
was
you
thinking,
go.
I was thinking that earlier. How much does it cost the city to do what they do and to bring in, all them officers are paying them to do all that? How much would it cost them to provide, honey buckets or provide
Right,
all the different
exactly.
things?
Exactly.
I mean,
Pick up our
But
bags of garbage.
But even with
Garbage
that,
pickup.
even
Right.
with that, Village of Hope is a model that requires no city money. It requires
help.
no city money. We've got all the money that we need in order to make that model happen, and we can replicate that model. The thing is
Yes.
that we can say, well, we should spend our money here, should spend it here. Spend it whatever way you want. Allow us to have Village of Hope. Allow us to replicate this model, and then we'll take care of the problem.
We'll take
Allow
care
us
of
to show you that it can be done.
We will take care of the homeless problem. If the city cannot do that, we will do that if they let us.
that's good advice for the city. I mean, if they can't lead, then follow and get the hell out of the way.
Or just open up. Just open up.
That's all we're asking. All
Right.
we asked was to be left alone, and we would have taken care of it. We would have gotten the porta potties, and we would have gotten the garbage, and it was all set up. All the city had to do was to leave us alone.
And people will stop seeing their cans and bottles and their garbage gone through if they just let us take care of ourselves. And all we need is a piece of land. Just
Not-
one piece of little property.
We won't eradicate
you know?
the problem, but it'll definitely make a big dent in it.
It will.
Sure.
It will because we
And-
won't have to suffer and scrap for every little thing we get.
And that big dent has a way of replicating itself because once somebody sees that, hey, this is pretty cool, and then
Something's being done.
I mean, yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's
not
like
that
anything else.
hard.
You see, they see somebody that's doing better, then they're going to want to do that too. I mean, it's just natural human nature to emulate someone that's if Joe's got a bigger fur coat, then I want to find out how he got the bigger fur coat, and it works the same way in homeless. I
Right.
mean,
Sure.
right.
if they see that, yeah, okay, these guys are getting a lot more attention and a lot more help because they've got a clean camp and they've got a good system going on,
Right.
then maybe I ought to keep my camp a little cleaner and
That'd be
things might
nice.
start happening a little better for me. That and pray. That's the
Sure.
only way I can-
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
exactly right.
So we got like 4 minutes left, and I was just thinking, why did the city say they had to sweep you folks for the Village of Hope?
All
Well,
kinds of
I can't
reasons.
understand
didn't
that
ask
if you guys
permission.
were doing it.
There were two reasons that the city gave. So one reason is they said that because we were harming environmentally protected land. Once again, it was not zone environmentally protected. We were next to land that was environmentally protected, but we were not on it.
And we were conscious about
and
that.
we were actually very careful about the environment. We picked up 25 bags of trash of stuff that was that the city had left on that land, and we cleaned it up. We were leaving it cleaner than we came to it. Secondly, they said is that we were the mayor's office said that we were neglecting the or putting down the efforts of the city and county. Rather, what we were doing is we were trying to support those efforts, to
Supplement them.
to
Right.
supplement them.
Yeah.
because
Right, exactly.
The whole thing of the whole service industry for the homeless in Portland is like a jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes there are pieces missing. The piece that's missing right now is stability for the people who are on the street, so that way they can access the services that are already there. So we were that piece that were providing and actually supporting the services
It's a
that
big
were already there.
piece. A big
Sure,
piece.
and allowing the people to participate in taking care of themselves.
Because we can have an address.
Reestablishing that
You know?
self-esteem.
I can have an address, and we can make our life start happening.
That's what
you
I
know?
learned from R2D2 when those folks came on. They had a place where they had computers, they had phones.
right,
that
exactly.
People could, be reached when they had job interviews and all that.
Right.
You can't
Place
get
to
anywhere.
shower
without
and look decent for those interviews. You know, you don't want to go in there looking like you know.
Well, they say, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, and the city just keeps digging.
Yeah, they're burying
keeps
us.
digging,
They're
it
done
seems
digging. They're burying us now. They're burying
That's
us.
true. Well, Dal, that was a quick hour, or almost an hour, wasn't it?
That was not
I
bad.
felt pretty good.
You
I
know?
appreciate everything you folks have brought
Thank you.
to
I'll
the
expect
fore
a
on
check in the
this.
mail.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Well, as usual, I learn a lot when guests come on, and we've had issues. People come on and talk about this issue before, and it's an
One last thing.
incredible
We
issue.
would really invite Ted Wheeler to sit down with us
Face to face.
face to face and
Please.
discuss this.
Just talk
Come
to
on,
us.
Ted.
We're human. We
Think
can
about
talk
it, man.
too.
Because
You know,
they
we have
refused-
You
conversations.
can't run away.
They've actually refused to talk to us up to this point.
Absolutely. And they're apologizing when we go to City Hall after we walk out the door. They apologize to the people that are left over for us being there. What are we doing wrong? We stand there and say nothing. Nothing.
Well, politics is basically people. People need to be talking to people.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen. We're down to a little less than a minute. I want to thank the crew for doing this. To thank the phone call. Both of them, as usual, the phone call sometimes is the highlight of the show. And I also almost forgot, I want to thank Jamie Partridge, who
Oh, yeah.
hooked
He's
me folks
amazing.
up.
He's amazing. Thank you, Jamie.
He's hooked
amazing.
folks up for me for 15 now, for the post office. He's done, if Jamie doesn't know about it, it's not happening.
That's right.
So
That's true.
I just want to say thanks a lot, Jamie.
I wanna thank
and
Lisa.
I also want to thank Thumper and Carrie Wheeler.
Thank you.
No relation.
No relation.
Not at all.
And
I want to change my last name now. Thank you so much.
Change that name.
You don't know
Make it
how
good.
often that happens.
And also, Steve, you've
goodness.
brought in some good folks, and I'm glad we did this.